We've told you before on this show how Ron DeSantis, the Trumpy governor of Florida, has helped turn the Sunshine State into a petri dish for Republican experiments in authoritarianism. Well, there's more news on that front this week. On Monday, DeSantis signed a law making it a crime to protest in a manner that disturbs someone at their home. In a nod to the latest Republican strawman, DeSantis cited unruly mobs at the homes of Supreme Court justices in the wake of the leaked draft opinion overturning Roe v. Wade. A war on protesters to go along with the DeSantis wars on voting rights, science, math books, Disney World, and kids who wear masks. Freedom! In some ways, DeSantis is just extending a path that was set out by the previous three Florida governors, all of them Republicans. The last time a Democrat ran for governor in Florida and won was in 1994. Tupac was still alive then. So you may be surprised to learn that the Democratic frontrunner to challenge DeSantis in his re-election bid this November is one of those Republican governors who preceded him. That would be Charlie Crist. He's a Democrat in Congress now and has been for a decade. He's been a Democrat for 10 years. But in 2006, he took the Sunshine State's top office with a very conservative message.
I believe that marriage is a sacred relationship between a man and a woman. I don't think gay adoption is appropriate. Governor Bush has been one of the most effective governors we have had. You know, I love Ronald Reagan. I think what's important is that we try to promote a culture of life, and I have a plan to do it with an adoption plan. We need to do everything we can to secure our border, to stop illegal immigration.
In fairness to Charlie Crist, he never seemed comfortable waging right-wing culture wars. I'm a happy warrior, I'm an optimist, he would say, putting a premium on niceness, a reputation that earned him the nickname Good Time Charlie. And as governor, Crist spent much of his time in office trying to sidestep the far right of his party and nudge the Republicans towards inclusiveness. Crist bucked tradition by declining to run for re-election as governor in 2010. Instead, he set his sights on Florida's open Senate seat. But with the Tea Party raging at the time, Good Time Charlie found little support among fellow Republicans. Crist would later write that his viable life as a Republican politician was ended by a hug, specifically a hug that he gave to President Barack Obama at a Florida town hall in 2009. Conduct unbecoming for a real Republican, apparently. After that, Crist wrote, "I would never have a future in my old party again." Crist left the GOP and ran for Senate as an independent, but he was soundly beaten by the man Republicans picked in his stead, a pro-Tea Party state legislator named Marco Rubio. By 2012, Crist had announced he was a Democrat. He apologized for many of his old stances, endorsed Barack Obama for re-election, and even spoke at the Democratic National Convention.
Half a century ago, Ronald Reagan, the man whose optimism was inspiring to me to enter politics, he famously said at one time that he did not leave the Democratic Party, but the party left him. Well, listen, I can relate. I didn't leave the Republican Party, it left me. Then again, my friend Jeb Bush recently noted Reagan himself would have been too moderate, too reasonable for today's GOP.
2 years later, Crist, the Democrat, ran for his old job against the Republican who had replaced him as governor, billionaire novice Rick Scott. Crist lost by about 60,000 votes out of nearly 6 million cast. In 2016, Crist was elected to Congress from Florida in a purple district that includes the high school he once attended. Once he was a Republican with an A rating from the NRA, now the gun lobby rates him an F. But after 5 years on Capitol Hill, Crist is vying for his old job, a third time, challenging Ron DeSantis for governor. His message, it's time to ditch the bully and give the nice guy a chance. Polls show Crist with a comfortable lead over his Democratic primary rival, Agriculture Secretary Nikki Fried, the only statewide elected Democrat in Florida who appeared on this show not long ago. But the most recent polls show Crist still trailing DeSantis in a head-to-head match by anywhere from 8 to 21 points. So how does Good Time Charlie Crist convince Democrats that he's the man that can break his old party's stranglehold on power? And how does he convince enough Floridians in 2022 that he deserves another crack at the job he once left? Why don't we ask him? Joining me now is current Democratic Florida Congressman and former Republican Florida Governor Charlie Crist. Congressman, thank you for coming on the show. Banning textbooks, calling teachers groomers, going after Disney. Republicans are out of control in Florida. Where are the Democrats on all of this? Why is your state party so bad at pushing back against these authoritarian measures?
I think we're pretty good at pushing back against it. You know, when they're banning textbooks in our state,
That's what Governor DeSantis is doing. What is next? Burning textbooks? I mean, it really is pretty outrageous. And I think that, going after Disney, I mean, Disney, I can tell you, Mehdi, as a guy who grew up in Florida, Disney is a revered icon in the Sunshine State. And I really don't know. I didn't know DeSantis was that anti-business. It's the largest employer in our state. But it shouldn't surprise us that he's doing that because he already sued the cruise industry in Florida, which employs, extended about 600,000 Floridians. So where DeSantis is on this stuff is beyond my comprehension. What I think is really happening is the following. I think the governor is really focused on the presidential ambitions that he has for 2024 instead of looking out for my fellow Floridians in 2022. And I think he's miscalculating. Now, he's doing pretty well, though, in polls that you see for 2024. The only person above him is Donald Trump, the former president.
So you say he's miscalculated, but Ron DeSantis narrowly won in 2018. And yet, in the intervening period, despite leading this authoritarian movement, despite going after Disney, despite presiding over chaos and mass death from the pandemic, more than 74,000 dead from COVID-19 in Florida, he holds a commanding poll lead over you and every other Democrat running in this race. Why is he still so popular in your state?
He's not. The latest poll I have seen has him down, rather us down to him only by 3. And I think it's important to note that, when you look at polls, I mean, how many people are really that confident in the polling industry generally? I don't know. The poll that matters to me, honestly, is the people. And when I go to the Publix here in the Sunshine State or the CVS or the gas station, God forbid, when you have to pay for so much for gas, people are pretty supportive of what we're doing. And the thing that really, I think, gets to people in Florida about DeSantis is how bullying he is. And the best example of that is a video that went viral about him, really chastising kids in school for wearing a mask behind him at a press conference. It was appalling.
Yes, it was outrageous. And we played that on this show, outrageous. I have to ask, Congressman, you've run for governor as a Republican. You've run for governor as a Republican and Democrat. You identify now as a Democrat, as a member of the Blue Dog Democratic group in Congress. In fact, the first time you ran as a Democrat against Rick Scott, one political commentator in Florida quipped, quote, "Charlie Crist is a Democrat only if you are a Republican." What do you say to critics who accuse you of hopping from election to election and party to party without any real convictions?
I am who I am, and I am who I've always been. I really feel, Mehdi, that in these times, the Republican Party that I used to know is gone. I mean, it really is. And in my state, I've got a governor that's anti-women, that's anti-African-American, that's anti-education. These things aren't where the Republican Party was when I was a Republican before. It truly has left me. I didn't leave it, as Reagan said in the inverse. And so I think what's happening is we need to have people who run for office, who serve in office, that truly want to be a public servant, that want to do what's right for all people, get away from all this petty bickering. People are sick of it. We need to have people in office, and I want to be the kind of governor that will listen to all people, and we'll have a Florida for all. We'll improve education in the Sunshine State. We'll protect our environment and do what's right for that industry that is so important to tourism. I feel that the environment and the economy in Florida, the most beautiful state in the country, are inextricably linked. We'll do what's right for people. We'll have their back, and we'll make sure that prices go down. Our property insurance is out of control. The price of gas, we could eliminate or suspend the state gas tax. The governor hasn't done that until October, right before an election. The people need to have somebody who's got their back and really cares about them, really listens to them, and understand who's the boss. It's not Governor DeSantis. He's acting like an autocrat. Boss in a democracy are the people of our state. It's the highest office in the land, and it's called citizen. And Governor DeSantis has forgotten that he's working for the people instead of him trying to tell our school boards, our county commissions, our local mayors what to do all the time with, bills that take away their authority. And then for crying out loud, he goes after Mickey Mouse. It's unbelievable. People of Florida know better.
I have to ask about Roe v. Wade, which has been in the news since the leaked draft opinion came out. You were a quote-unquote self-proclaimed pro-life governor of Florida. To be fair, you were always opposed to overturning Roe v. Wade. What would you do as governor of Florida, as Democratic governor of Florida this time, to try and secure abortion rights in your state?
I would do what I even did as a Republican governor of Florida. I'm the only person in this race, Mehdi, who actually, as governor, has vetoed an anti-abortion bill. I'm the only person in this race who actually stopped an anti-abortion bill in the state Senate. And I'll do that again. My record is crystal clear. It's why I have a 100% rating from Planned Parenthood and NARAL. I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud to have the endorsement of Speaker Nancy Pelosi, very proud to have the endorsement of Alex Sink, the former CFO of Florida, and they talked about the issue of reproductive rights. I've always fought for women, make sure that I will stand with them. I respect them. I was raised with 3 sisters. I've respected women my whole life, and these people who try to tell women what to do with their body are off. They're just missing it. The right thing to do is to respect others and practice the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have done unto you. I practice it every day, whether it's women or African Americans or fellow Greek Americans like me.
Last question, Congressman. We talk about voting rights in the abstract, but in Florida, Republicans have really gone out of their way to stop predominantly black ex-convicts from voting. And it wasn't just Ron DeSantis, your successor in the governor's mansion, Rick Scott, now a senator. He rolled back your plans for automatic rights restoration of former felons. I've got to ask, how much of your party's obsession with voting rights and voter suppression is just about stopping black people from voting, just straight up racism?
Well, I don't know. That's a tough question, and I'm not sure what percentage I could put on that. But I can tell you this. It's very important that people get a second chance. And that's why, as governor before, even as a Republican, Mehdi, I brought back automatic restoration of rights. Because as my colleague, God rest his soul, John Lewis said, and it gave them the right to vote, 155,000 former felons got the right to vote under my first administration. And what I think is important is what John Lewis said. The right to vote is precious. In fact, he said, it is so precious, it's probably sacred, Charlie. And he was absolutely right, because all these other issues that we care about, a woman's right to choose, protecting the environment, making sure that everybody does have that right to vote, comes from that right to vote. That's what it all flows from.